That's not a father. That's a disgrace. The groom's mother spat those words with perfect icy confidence, loud enough for the entire room to hear. And then she laughed, sharp, brittle, mean, while her friends looked me up and down like I was something stuck to the bottom of their designer shoes. Right there, at my daughter's own wedding, she reduced me to nothing. I felt the world tilt. I stood frozen beneath the chandeliers of the Crystal Bay Conservatory, a place so gilded it felt like stepping into someone else's dream. Or nightmare. My daughter Elena turned sharply toward the sound, her eyes searching my face, but she didn't move. She was trapped between two worlds, and for the first time, she didn't know which one she belonged to. And that should have been the moment I walked away. But destiny had other plans. Before I go further, if you're already hooked, hit the subscribe button so you never miss stories just like this. Stories of justice, heart, courage, and unforgettable twists. Now back to the moment everything shattered. The groom's mother, Camilla Hawthorne, heiress, philanthropist on paper, tyrant in pearls, lifted her glass and sneered so others would hear. Honestly, Elena should be grateful my son is marrying down. Some families just don't belong in places like this. Her gaze landed on me like a blade. My dear, she continued, her smile widening, your father showing up in that outfit, it's practically charity work. Laughter rippled. Soft at first, then bolder. People love cruelty when someone powerful gives them permission. I stood there, clutching the small wooden box I'd carved myself. A wedding gift. Something humble, honest. And suddenly it felt like a confession of poverty I'd never made. But then something unexpected happened. My daughter's new husband, Adrian Hawthorne, slowly rose from the head table. His chair scraped against marble like a warning. No one expected what he did next. But before I tell you that, you need to know who I really am. And why this family, this empire, made the mistake of thinking they could humiliate me. My name is Elias Mercer. I'm 62 years old. And for most of my adult life, I let the world believe I was nothing more than a retired mechanic living on a modest pension in a small coastal town. But that wasn't a lie. It was a disguise. Hours earlier, I'd stood in the conservatory's grand entrance, wearing my best suit, old but cared for. The kind of suit stitched with memories rather than wealth. People swept past me in gowns worth more than my workshop once made in a month. Crystal walls shimmered with lights, and the air smelled of orchids imported from continents away. Elena looked radiant, silk flowing like water around her, a smile that could make any father's heart swell. But she looked through me when she walked by, gliding in the current of people who believed themselves untouchable. That should have been my first warning. Camilla didn't even acknowledge me. Instead, she whispered to the event planner, "Put him at table 32, behind the floral arch. We can't have the camera catching that." I pretended not to hear. Pride has teeth, but a parent's love softens the bite. During family photos, the photographer lifted a hand. "Father of the bride. Step in, sir." But Camilla's voice sliced through the air. "No, not him. It ruins the aesthetic." My daughter looked away. I felt something inside me tighten, but I stayed silent. I'd lived long enough to know that dignity held quietly is still dignity. Then came the moment everything cracked. Camilla rose for her speech. Her diamonds glittered. Her smile didn't. She lifted a crystal flute, leaned toward the mic and said, "Tonight we celebrate my son, who has chosen kindness over convenience, marrying into a family of simpler means." Very simple. People tittered, kept breathing. "But what can you expect," she continued, eyes locking onto mine, "from a girl raised by a man who never amounted to anything?" Hush fell. And then she said it. "That's not a father. That's a disgrace." Her friends erupted into laughter. My heart didn't break for myself. It broke for Elena. For the little girl who once believed I hung the moon, now watching her father mocked in front of the world. And then a chair scraped. Breath caught. A storm gathered. Adrian, the groom, stepped forward. He pulled the gold family pin from his lapel and let it fall to the marble floor with a soft, devastating clang. "You can insult my job," he said, voice steady. You can insult my background, but you will never speak of my father-in-law that way. Silence. He turned to Elena. I love you, but I will not build a marriage on disrespect. Today was supposed to unite families. Your mother has made that impossible. Then he turned to me. Mr. Mercer, let's go. He took my daughter's hand, gently, firmly, and together the three of us walked out of the Crystal Palace that had never been built for people like me. Or so they thought. Because the truth was waiting just beyond the parking lot. A black SUV idled beneath a street lamp. The driver stepped out and opened the door with a bow. Mr. Mercer, he said. Your office is ready. The board is assembled. Elena froze. Dad, what office? I exhaled slowly. For 24 years I had been more than a mechanic. Before I retired, before I hid away in a quiet fishing town, I was the founder and chief architect of Mercer Innovations, a private engineering and technology firm valued quietly at $3.2 billion. I'd kept that world far from my daughter so she'd grow up grounded, not entitled, so she'd learn compassion before privilege. Come, I told her. Both of you. There's something you need to see. We drove through the city until glass towers rose around us, one taller, darker, more commanding than the rest. Mercer Tower. My tower. Inside, the boardroom hummed with analysts, strategists, and attorneys. At the head of the table was a dossier stamped with a familiar name. The Hawthorne Group. Elena and Adrian took seats beside me, their hands intertwined. I didn't want to use this, I said softly. I never wanted war. But Camilla had chosen it. We opened the file. Fraudulent tax filings, siphoned charity funds, manipulated employee pensions, inflated valuations of their resort chain, and a debt structure so fragile a whisper could topple it. With one signature, Mercer Innovations acquired 58% of the Hawthorne Group before sunrise. By noon, Camilla was escorted from her own headquarters. By evening, the news cycle devoured the dynasty she'd built on arrogance. And by morning, Elena understood the truth. I never cared about money. Cared about character. 6 months later, the air smelled of pine and sea salt as we sat on my cliffside porch, a home Elena had once believed too simple to matter. Adrian grilled vegetables by the fire pit. My daughter laughed in a way she hadn't since childhood. Dad, she said, placing a hand over mine, thank you for letting me learn who people really are. I looked at her, the woman she'd become. Strong, kind, unshakable. You gave me something priceless too, I said. The reminder that love means nothing without respect, and that the world can strip you of many things, but never of your worth. The tide crashed below us, steady as truth. Sometimes emperors wear crowns. Sometimes tyrants wear pearls. And sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone assumed was ordinary. If this story touched you, remind someone today that their value isn't measured by wealth, status, or the opinions of cruel people, but by the courage to stand tall when others try to make them small. And if you want more stories of justice, redemption, and love that refuses to break, like, comment, subscribe, and join us here on Heartline Stories, where every tale begins and ends with love.